into situations now. There's fees for this and fees for that.
With USA Bank, no monthly fees, and what you see is what you get.
No other bank does more for us.
Doesn't say contraception. He doesn't say. Yes, 42. Hello, the Young Turks! It's a Friday show. Wait a minute. What is this? This is not our regular studio. I love saying that every time. We're at USC! Ben Beckwith, John Anarola, Anna Kasparian, Jake Huger. Do we have a power panel drop it thing? If we do, go ahead and drop it. If we don't, let's just move on. Okay, we got an awesome show for you guys. Now, I was just telling these guys off air that when we used to do shows at different places like the museum in DC, YouTube Space LA, I'd feel slightly uncomfortable. Now I feel super comfortable. I feel like, obviously, on Fridays we do shows at USC.
Not a big deal.
Obviously, Annenberg School. Hello. Okay. One of my regrets is that I didn't go to the Annenberg School. Because Penn, where I went undergrad, also had an Annenberg School of Communication, which would have made a ton of sense. Instead, I went to the douchebag school of Wharton. Where my fellow douchebag, Donald Trump. I mean, yeah, do we have news or anything like that? No, probably not. All right, so in the first hour, we're going to get into the town halls. I'm full of rage over it. I'm going to continue to be full of rage. But then later, we're going to enlighten a little bit. We're going to switch around from rage to a little bit of information. The Kochs are coming after electric cars. Thank God. Yeah, about time somebody put Tesla in its place, right? Yeah, we're going to fight back, and we're going to explain to you why they're actually doing that and why it's such a bad idea. We know what they're doing. Well, a lot of people actually know them. A lot of people actually know them from all their industrial part of their company, right? The Dixie Cups, yada yada. But they also have a huge oil part of their company, mainly refinery. So we'll get into that a little bit. And then an important endorsement for Hillary Clinton, which will be totally meaningless as usual. But I'll tell you why. Well, actually, you're right, John. There should be a little there because this guy might be irrelevant in South Carolina for reasons we'll explain, but also why he decided to endorse Hillary Clinton and not Bernie Sanders, even though Bernie Sanders is closer to his worldview. I have the answer. And then the Pope says, let them have sex, but not necessarily have babies.
Right?
And a fake gynecologist. So all that on the show. So without further ado, we're going to get started. And I'm going to start, okay? Now, normally on a Friday panel show, Johnny Pie takes it away, and he will in a second.
There's been enough of that for too many years.
Yeah, there has. Yeah. It's about time somebody else got to present a couple of stories, okay, John? Just give me a chance, John. Okay. So we're going to start on the town halls. So over the last couple of days, there's been 2 town halls. Three, actually. That's right. 2 on the Republican side on CNN, and then 1 on the Democratic side last night. So the first night, it was just 3 of the Republicans, Rubio, Cruz, and Carson. And John and I were covering it live on tytnetwork.com/live, where you should watch all the debates and election nights. And we got in a bit of a rage because questions to the Republicans were so soft. Now, we showed you that. I'm going to show it to you again, a shorter version of it. And then I want to compare and contrast it to what other town halls have been like to give you a sense of how incredibly conservative the media is. How they are either scared to death of the Republicans or have decided that they are kind of like them and would like to take it easier on them. So I promised you that this is only half of what happened on Wednesday night. We just needed to shorten it a little bit. So this gives you a taste of how soft Anderson Cooper was on all the Republican candidates. Watch.
We know President Obama plays golf. We know former President George W. Bush paints now. He used to clear a brush, probably still does out in Texas. What do you do to relax?
Play pool.
Play pool?
I love to play pool.
Are you competitive when you play pool? What sort of music do you listen to?
I primarily like classical music.
When did you know that Jeanette was the woman for you?
Well, I'd like to think she liked me first, but I liked her.
How'd you meet? If you are elected president, would you still coach your son in football? In Mason City, I was surprised you mentioned that you're colorblind, which I hadn't realized, and that you should have seen your clothes before your wife started picking them out. Your wife mentioned this to CNN a while back, that you occasionally, when you call her on the phone, you sing to her? You sing musicals? Is that true?
But look, I mean,
what's your favorite musical? Do you want to tell me what reporters you're having drinks with in D.C.? I guess not. What's your favorite cocktail? I understand you're also kind of a night owl. What do you do late at night? Do you watch television? Do you have a guilty pleasure?
Okay, so as you can tell, that was as soft as softballs get, and it was like that all night long. Almost no substantive or hard questions, challenging questions at all.
Are you competitive at pool?
Oh yeah,
that's what I'm on.
Okay, point well taken, Ben.
Yeah.
Now,
I'm sorry, but you saw how Carson perked up at that question. Like about the classical music, I thought his eyes were closed a shorter amount of time than it normally.
Slightly more awake.
Yeah.
Okay, now, yesterday on the program, I showed you that same Anderson Cooper in a Democratic debate, and he lit into Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. Please watch that on YouTube. You're going to be amazed by that. Then we got some criticism from people saying, wait, Jack, that's not fair. One was a town hall, which is supposed to be super soft and more personal, and the other one was a debate that's supposed to be harder. That's why it's apples and oranges. Oh, okay, great. So now let's show you the very next night at town hall on MSNBC. First of all, we're not playing with the tape here. There were no soft questions. There was not a single personal question. There was not a single question about how much they love their wives or what they like to drink.
Bernie, foot massage or back massage.
Right. None of that. Right. Instead, we got this.
Agree with that characterization, but this week you told my colleague John Ralston that your one litmus test for a Supreme Court nominee is overturning Citizens United. So why doesn't that prove what Secretary Clinton says about you? I mean, you didn't say that you have a Roe versus Wade litmus test. You didn't say you had an immigration action litmus test, a marriage equality litmus test.
Last week you said it was a low blow for Secretary Clinton to bring up
the past criticisms that you had for President Obama, and you said you had every right to disagree with him. But it went further than that. In fact, this is you calling for a primary challenge. No, I get that. Well, but there are some Democrats who want to continue the president's policies. Right. Why should they trust you as somebody who wanted him primaried? You said it would have been a good idea if he would have been primaried.
Well, by the way, there is one of the two Democratic candidates here who actually ran against Barack Obama. It wasn't me. All right. Second of all,
you were pretty tough on Bill Clinton's record, and you said you hit his record on Wall Street. You said this was a guy who wanted to deregulate Wall Street, was for welfare reform, the Welfare Reform Act that you didn't like, and got NAFTA through. It didn't sound like a presidency that you were very pleased with. You know, a common complaint in those European systems has to do with wait times for treatment, wait times for seeing specialists. How do you propose in your Medicare for All system to not have Americans have to deal with rationing of care?
Chuck,
I mean, this is a common, that's why I say it's common critique in Canada and the UK in particular.
Well
done.
Senator, you have often talked of the need for a political revolution in the United States. You're a democratic socialist. When some Latinos hear those words, they think Venezuela and Cuba, Chavez and the Castro brothers, 57 years of dictatorship. Talk to the people who escaped those regimes today and hear you use those words and wonder exactly what you have in mind.
Now, again, a small taste, all night long. And they also, the producers pick who's going to get to ask questions in the town hall. They have hundreds of questions to choose from, and they select them. And almost every one of them, there was two that were neutral towards Bernie Sanders. We call it like it is. We're like, oh, okay, that was a question about veterans. That was fine. There's two other questions about veterans that were like, hey, how come do you need to apologize to veterans? Why would Bernie Sanders need to apologize to veterans?
Do you remember the woman? It was a young Hispanic woman. She asked a question about education, about his education policy, and she stumbled a bit over the doubling the cost of the Pell Grants. That question, somebody linked to an article on a conservative blog from last year. It was directly from the blog. Yeah. So not only the doubling of the Pell Grants, but will that make it more innovative, more transparent, and more efficient? Those exact adjectives in that exact order on a conservative blog middle of last year.
Chuck Todd at one point bragged that one of the questioners had actually written it out. So thereby implying that the other questioners had not written out their questions. It was likely a producer who got it from a conservative blog and said, okay, you'd like to ask about education. It's not like the person's fake. They're not an intern. They're not a producer. They came in, they said, I'd like to ask Bernie about education. Okay, here's the question. Right? I got it from a conservative blog, and now you ask it. So constantly aggressive. So then, as you saw there, at one point, Bernie had to go, whoa, because he's been attacked so much. And by the way, they were almost equally aggressive, in some parts some questions even more aggressive towards Hillary Clinton. That's true. Okay? So Democrats attack. And you can see it in their tone, too, Chuck Todd. Why should they trust you, right? And why were you against President Obama? Why were you against President Clinton? He's in a Democratic primary. That's like the worst question you can ask him. Now, again, if they're even-handed, that's one thing. Yeah. If one side gets, do you like pina coladas? And the other side gets,
do you like getting caught in the rain?
Right. That would be fair. The other side gets, you have to explain to Latinos why you're not a dictator. Well, that was the last question from Ballard.
You use that as an...
Which, by the way, I think that's a fair question. I have no problem with the aggressive questioning on the Democratic side. I agree that it needs to be fair on both sides. I have nonsensical things, and they want to know how personable a presidential candidate is. But if we just move away from that a little bit and are aggressive on both sides, then I'll be happy. And then I want to make a really quick, irrelevant point. It's amazing how much John...
I was going to make it irrelevant.
No, I don't want to hear this point.
It's amazing how much John looks like Chuck Todd. Amazing.
I don't want to see the look on JR's face because I know he's so happy with himself right now.
JR's been saying that for years.
Wonderful.
So now, of course, there are some apologists who are going to say, wait a minute, Cenk, it's still not fair. Yes, you showed Anderson Cooper, that same Anderson Cooper, but he was in a debate. Yes, you just showed town hall to town hall, but one was on CNN and the other one was on MSNBC. Okay, so now I've got a town hall for you guys from earlier in this same election where CNN did the town hall. If there's no excuse anymore, the debates you're supposed to ask tough questions, but in town halls you're supposed to pitch softballs. Now let's see if Cuomo on CNN at a town hall pitched softballs or hardballs to Bernie Sanders. Let's watch.
We hear people say that you are paying for it is actually punitive. You're going to punish people who make money. You're going to punish the financial district. You're going to punish and wind up
changing the idea of an open and free economy, because you're going to punish them for speculating, which means that they won't speculate as much, which means you won't get as much activity. And if you do a checklist of how you pay for everything, what you're doing is amassing the biggest government ever. After President Clinton said the era of big government was over, seems like Bernie Sanders is saying, not only if it's over, I'm going to do it bigger than ever. And what about the idea that you're bringing back the era of big government and making it bigger than ever? Give me a yes or no on that. Is the era of big government back with President Sanders? To pay for this, what you're really asking for is one of the biggest tax hikes in history. And that is the criticism.
Okay. The top marginal tax rate was 90% for decades.
So he's 100% wrong about that. But what's weird is I didn't hear any questions about what kind of drinks he likes.
Yeah, exactly.
I heard, why are you punishing people? Punish.
Biggest
Punish.
government. Big government.
Well, big government. You're bringing it back. And how are you going to pay for this?
Yeah.
What I didn't hear CNN asking the town hall to the Republicans is, hey, you're talking about expanding the military in an unprecedented way. How are you going to pay for it? And isn't that big government?
Yeah.
And don't you, aren't you bringing that back? And then, of course, the biggest tax hike ever. Wait, I thought that it was supposed to be even-handed, that at a town hall where we're supposed to play patty cakes.
Yeah.
No, when it comes to Democrats, no patty cakes, nothing but hardballs. When it comes to Republicans, the mainstream media wets themselves.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, I'm so scared. Donald Trump's going to yell at me. Ted Cruz is saying I'm a bad guy.
That's what it is, right? I mean, it's not ideology, right? It is, and Phil Jackson said it. You've been saying it for a long time. I don't really believe you. I disagreed with you in the beginning. I'm 100% convinced. You complain enough. You yell enough. You go after Megan Fox enough. I mean, Megyn Kelly.
Megan Fox too.
By the way, I got news for you. Megan Fox get a job at Fox tomorrow. But you go after reporters hard enough and with enough venom, and suggest that that reporters are part of a worldwide powerful orthodoxy that is coming to get the common people and strip away the things that are important to you. Yeah, eventually they're going to take a step. I know, having been a mainstream reporter for however long I was, 8 years, 10 years, I was sensitive to it. Yeah, I was like, don't call me liberal. I'm super liberal, but don't call me liberal. Why? Look at me bend over backwards. Look at me bend over backwards. Where sometimes I do a story and be like, well, I just made that person seem like they knew what they were talking about.
And that's why it seems like an infomercial. When you just, if they want to do a town hall and be personable, they do 100 town halls. They're doing town halls in South Carolina and Nevada right now as we're filming this. They can do that. You're giving them the equivalent of millions of dollars by doing it for them. You made the comparison, the joke, do you like pina coladas? Anderson Cooper literally asked him what his favorite cocktail was.
Yeah.
And I think that we need to refine our vocabulary a bit, because we're saying the questions are too soft. Soft questions exist. A soft question is sitting down with Ted Cruz and saying, so a lot of Americans really like the Second Amendment. What will you do to protect gun rights? That's soft because it just tees up a talking point. These aren't even questions. These are nothing. These are stroking their hair lightly.
I do a lot of interviews, and I've gotten pretty good at them, and there's an art to it, and there are questions that are not hard-hitting political questions that you want to ask to create a conversation that is informative, entertaining, and keeps the conversation going, and hopefully gets you into a frame of mind and a give and take with the person you're interviewing, so that you can get more out of them when you ask particularly difficult questions.
You want them to be comfortable, right? And trust you to ask the right question.
And by the way, sometimes those personal questions tell you even more.
That's right. Sometimes they
none
can't.
of us are against that, but you have got to be even-handed. Yeah. If your framing is, this guy is lovely to his wife and kids, and this guy's a socialist dictator, well, then you've done a great disservice to the audience, because you framed it, the moderator, the guy in charge, has framed it as, you should be careful because this guy is going to raise your taxes and he's a dictator. Watch out for him. And the other guy, well, God, man, he coaches his son's football team, and his wife loves him so much. That framing is not only monumentally important in terms of how the audience sees it subconsciously, but as John pointed out, it's millions of dollars of free advertising in essence on TV. Normally you'd have to pay for that. Instead, the Republicans get it for free, and the Democrats get the reverse. It's almost like running
Attack
negative attack ads against the Democrats.
The only upside to this is for the Democrats is because I think they're two particularly smart, adept candidates. Is that I think they inevitably look better at the end of these debates because they've dealt with substantive issues.
They look better, and they're also there's only one political party that has threatened to deny access to networks over hard questions.
That's right.
Right?
That's true.
So,
So I hear you guys on all that, but it's still not fair to make them overcome that burden.
Right. Well, I got it. And there's also bounds of reason to the attack that you make on Bernie. I mean, there's a way to ask those questions. Look, America has a Chris Cuomo problem, right? But there are ways that those questions get asked that are interesting. You can ask a fair question that puts Bernie Sanders on the spot to explain legitimately how are you going to pay for this, and what sort of executive actions might you take without a Congress that is probably not going to cooperate with you. And should Americans be afraid? Afraid is probably the wrong word, but should Americans fear? Again, it's apparently hard to do. But, what will you do if faced with a Congress that won't do it? Will you spend money? How will you pay for it? What compromises are you prepared to make when you realize that you can't pay for it? And then if he can go, I'm positive I can pay for it, we're going to have a revolution. And if he keeps answering that question, that wouldn't satisfy me, but it might satisfy a lot of people, but that would be Bernie Sanders' choice in how to answer it.
And I welcome that question. I think it's the role of journalists to ask those questions to both sides. Here's the deal I'll make with the mainstream media, because they won't let us do the debates because the Republicans will be so scared of us. I mean, they couldn't possibly answer our questions. Donald Trump would probably literally leave in the middle and cry in the hallway, right? So they get the mainstream media guys to play patty cakes with them. And so what I'm asking you guys is just ask 50% of what you ask the Democrats to the Republicans. Let's just call a deal. I mean, you don't even ask 25% as hard a question to the Republicans. So if we could do that, then maybe we'd have a deal. And by the way, so yes, the huge part of it is the intimidation that the Republicans have done. Also, some part of it is Comcast. They say the media is liberal. What does it mean? When Ben worked in the media, yes, he was a liberal human being who happened to work in the media. But the media is owned by and operated by, in this case, the MSNBC and CNN, Time Warner and Comcast. I can assure you, Time Warner and Comcast are not liberal. Okay, that is not what they do. They're a giant corporation that is deeply conservative. And
deeply conservative fiscally and regulatorily. I mean, they're probably indifferent or perhaps liberal on social issues. I mean,
no, they're robots. Let's just call it what it is, right? So it's not like there is a Mr. Comcast, okay? And the robot wants lower taxes,
or a Miss Comcast.
That's right. I don't want to step on any toes there. Okay, so they want lower taxes so they can have more for their bottom line. They want less regulation. They want to be able to merge, etc. They have these things. To them, if they make slightly more money by being socially liberal, for example, in gay rights, sure, have at it, right? But most of their incentives are going to lean in the conservative and Republican direction. And then finally, Chris Cuomo and Chuck Todd and Anderson Cooper, they all live in the vat of the establishment. So in that stew, it's not that they're bad people. It's just that everyone around them thinks, wow, Bernie Sanders is really going to punish all the rich. And so Chris Cuomo doesn't think that that's a unfair question. He thinks that's what all my friends are asking. Is Bernie Sanders going to punish us?
Chris, aren't you going to ask him? You need to ask him.
That's
right. He's going to punish us.
And you combine that.
You should say punish like 4 times in a row.
Combine that with a perpetual fear of losing their multi-million-dollar yearly contracts, which we're going to see in the Anderson Cooper Donald Trump story as well.
Well, I don't think it's that. I think it's inside that bubble. And an overwhelming fear that you'll be accused of being a liberal, which somehow seems like it would just, you feel like it would just derail your career. How long is Joe Scarborough on in the morning for? 3 hours or
17 hours? I really believe, I think that they are extending it to 4 now.
Well, let's say for the purposes of this, because it'll make it a better point, let's say 4.
Okay.
All right, so 4 hours, and then this is the liberal network, so that guy's on for 4 hours in the morning, the show's named after him, and it's Jose Diaz-Balart. I'm trying to think of an equivalent, right? And I'm coming up the name that comes into my head. So, okay, for the Republican debate, Keith Ellison is going to ask the questions. The liberal Muslim congressman from Minnesota is going to ask. Like Jose Diaz-Balart is a extreme right wing conservative. He and his brother And that question about, first of all, he's got no accent. I'm not buying Venezuela. I'm not buying Venezuela. I'm not. Just say Venezuela. I know you can do it. I know it. But he's got a thing with Venezuela and Hugo Chavez. He's got a thing with Castro because I don't remember the history now, but I'm 97% sure if it's not the Diaz-Balarts, it's all their friends. They lost their land. Castro came and took their land, and so that's his motivation in that question. I'm not a, my dad was a bit of a Castro fan, but I'm not a, but like, I got it. First of all, as dictators go, he's in the better half of dictators, right? But these guys, and never acknowledging the brutal, horrible dictatorship which caused a legitimate revolution in Cuba in 1958, that we caused by propping up a brutal,
and if Sanders starts seizing land, then we'll oppose it.
So it's like saying having Elizabeth Warren resign, and then she gets to ask the Republicans all the questions, which, by the way, is a debate we'd all watch.
Yeah. But look, to be fair, I think that question, as unfair as it seemed, was a good question, because there are a lot of Cubans in Florida who look at someone like Bernie Sanders and they think that he's a communist. They think that he is going to advocate for what happened in Cuba to happen in the United States. So for him to have an opportunity to answer that question, I think is important. The framing wasn't perfect.
No. I don't even care about that question. Yeah. Sure, ask him all the fair, unfair questions in the world. Then ask Trump, hey, 40% of the country thinks you're a fascist. Mm-hmm. Okay, so for example, what they did with Jews is they banned them from the country, and they talked about giving them making them wear certain things. You said the same exact thing about Muslims. So can you explain to us why you're not a fascist?
Yeah, that would be a great question.
But here's the thing. Like, I agree with you. There obviously still are and growing irrelevancy for these people in South Florida. As the Cuban American population gets younger, and the president is going to Cuba, and nobody cares anymore. That's why the embargo's over. It had its 50-year run.
Yeah, right. Some reporters think people care.
Right, but Jose Diaz-Balart, I know it in my bones. If he spent 4 minutes explaining, because he is a conduit where that information might be listened to, and he could say, hey, I can see you guys probably aren't going to vote for Bernie Sanders. You're Republicans. You're conservative Republicans. Bernie Sanders is not going to seize land like Fidel Castro. Right. And if Jose Diaz-Balart thinks that's a possibility, which I'm sure he has never disabused anyone of, I'm not sure, I'm guessing, but if he believes that, then he has absolutely no business working at MSNBC or anywhere. He can go work for Alex Jones or somewhere else on the web where they espouse crazy conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
All right, John, what's next?
Okay, everything else is next. Let's move on to Donald Trump. Like Bernie Sanders, Donald Trump has, at least in part, attempted to establish his credibility and his judgment as a potential commander-in-chief by pointing to his supposed opposition to the war in Iraq before the war in Iraq actually began. But unlike Bernie Sanders, he can't actually point to a speech and a vote against the war in Iraq, which Bernie Sanders did do, again, before the war actually began. And so he says there's evidence, but he has not been able to produce any evidence. And unfortunately for him, as of the town hall that was conducted last night, some evidence as to his position on the war in Iraq has actually come about, an interview with Howard Stern, but it's not going to reinforce his position. Let's watch.
The enemy is, and a lot of times the politicians don't want to tell you that.
Are you for invading Iraq?
Yeah, I guess so. I wish it was. I wish the first time it was done correctly.
And so what you saw there was him on Howard Stern. We know it was him on Howard Stern. No one's questioning that it was him in 2002 before the war actually began. Now, this obviously seems to contradict what he has been saying in an attempt to differentiate himself from other Republican candidates. And so last night, Anderson Cooper decided to bring up this new evidence in the most cowardly way possible. Let's watch.
I have not heard it. It includes an audio clip of what appears to be you on Howard Stern talking on the radio on September 11th, 2002. He asked you, are you for invading Iraq? You said, yeah, I guess so. I wish the first time it was done correctly. Is that accurate? Do you remember saying that?
No, but I mean, I could have said that. Nobody asked me. I wasn't a politician. It was probably the first time anybody asked me that question. But by the time the war started, that was quite a bit before.
Yeah, this was 2002.
Yeah, by the time the war started, I was against the war. A lot of people said, it was so early that even if it was a little bit after the war, I mean, he was totally against the war. I was very much against it. And that was probably the first time I was ever even asked about the war. But that was probably the first time, I don't remember that, but it was probably the first time I was asked about it.
Again, I haven't heard of it, but you may have said
sector, Yeah, I may have. When you're in the private sector, you get asked things, and you're not a politician. And probably the first time I was asked, by the time the war started, I was against it, and shortly thereafter.
Okay, so a couple of things we got to point out there. That's him on Howard Stern. Everybody knows that's him. So Anderson Cooper says, it appears to be you, I haven't actually listened to it. Like, he wouldn't even expose himself to the information so that he would have plausible deniability to say that it was not actually him. Then he reads it and says, do you remember that? No, not do you remember that. You said that. It contradicts what you've been saying now. Respond. Give him the chance to respond. That's being a responsible journalist. But not implying in 5 different ways that what we know is true is not true.
That's because Trump will come out and say, if he might say, it's not me, and then he doesn't want to contradict him. So it appears to be you, right? Gosh.
Trump is such a successful bully, it's incredible. But what I want to figure out is whether or not that was the first time Trump was asked when he talked about the war.
What would it matter? Like, and he keeps saying, oh, that was way before the war. That's what you've been saying. You've been saying you didn't just catch up eventually. You were against it before it even happened.
Right.
So you can't then say, oh, well, that was way before it happened. But once it happened and way after it happened, then I was definitely against it. Well, then, yes, you joined the 60 to 70% of Americans who were against it by that point.
I like Anderson Cooper. I do. I certainly like him, I think, more than you guys. I think he's a good broadcaster, and I think he's done a pretty good job until this.
Before Wednesday, you remember, I said I think he will ask follow-ups. I think he will ask questions, and he didn't.
It's a hard job, and I think he's. There's no way any part of that question is okay. Because first of all, if you guys aren't sure it's Donald Trump, then don't broadcast
Exactly.
it. Don't talk like you have fact checkers. You have a partnership. You're CNN. You have a partnership with factcheck.org. Before you have that partnership, I guess you can put anything on the air you wanted, whatever you felt like it, for 20 years. So, like, there's a system. Of course it's him, or they wouldn't do it. You find that out. So, you're John. You get the
guys. Let's be fair. He was in the private sector.
Yeah, this is the private.
Yeah. What difference is
people ask me all the time.
That's the point he's making. I didn't have to be a politician. I knew it was wrong. Right. Oh, well, you can't say I was wrong to support it. I wasn't a politician.
By the way, I think the exact opposite. Technically, now he's still in the private sector, so I guess he can continue to say whatever he wants.
He can be wrong all he likes.
Yeah, and we do know this, though. The first time you're asked the question, you can say whatever the hell you want, because it doesn't count.
Yeah. So what's amazing to me is that we disproved that Trump said anything about the Iraq War before the war began. It turns out, by the way, because of this new tape from Howard Stern, we were wrong. We thought he'd said nothing about it. It turns out he was actually in favor of it, right? But for all the media to come out and be like, oh my God, it turns out that he wasn't against the Iraq War before. We know! Yeah. We looked at all the stuff, and there is no record of Donald Trump being against the war before the war.
Yeah.
No record of it. So, but you let him get away with that for what, 6 months? Mm-hmm. Before you finally turn around because of a little bit of tape on Howard Stern?
Yeah.
And by the way, to be fair to the media, like right before the Howard Stern thing, they had finally, like John King on CNN and stuff, was like, wait a minute. We couldn't corroborate what Trump was saying. Of course, you can't corroborate anything he's saying.
It's incredible.
You should have done that fact check 6 months ago like we did.
So, we don't have the Stephanopoulos clip.
I do, actually. I've seen a couple quotes.
Okay, so go through the Stephanopoulos. Because George Stephanopoulos gets an A.
Yes,
he did it exactly right. But then, even at the end of the interview that you're about to read, you see the brilliance of Trump. Because even crushed, he just comes back to the original point, and then that's. But
so Stephanopoulos did actually. This is how you present the information and how you tie it into the message that that Trump has been spreading over the past, as you're saying, 6 months. So Stephanopoulos asked him. Now he plays the video. He says, "Now will you stop claiming you're the only one against the Iraq War before it began?" Donald Trump says, "No, that was long before the war began, and by the time the war began, I was saying, and I'm on the record as saying that we shouldn't go in." Which is not true. So George Stephanopoulos cuts in and says, "But you're not on record at all opposing the war before it began. There's simply no evidence of that, sir." Trump responds, "Well, there is evidence, and I'll find evidence, because I was against the war, and you can say the way I said it. That was long before the war started, and that was an interview. That was the first time I was ever actually asked that question." It sounds like I'm making fun of him by literally reading the things that he has said.
Alien-esque.
It's very pale-esque.
Well, and let's just note for the record,
just an interview.
When
it was just the first interview.
Yeah. When he says there is evidence and I'll find it, that by definition means you don't have it.
Yeah.
Totally. But
There is no evidence. You were against.
You're Donald Trump. You have limited resources. You would have found it. It would have been found.
And here is
Does
why.
somebody have a LexisNexis account here?
Exactly. And here is why, of course, this is
That's still
extremely
exists, by the way.
significant. I think it does, actually. I think I should have access to it. It's extremely significant whether he was on the right side or the wrong side of it. If you were to believe, for instance, that it may have been the worst decision ever made by a president in history to invade. And the person who said that was last night Donald Trump at the town hall. So it's the worst decision ever, a decision that you are now on the record as having supported at the time.
It's not a gotcha moment because of his unbounded braggadocio that he made a cornerstone of his campaign that he was against it beforehand, which goes to his brilliance because we just presumed that that was the case. Nobody found anything else. It turns out he was on the most popular radio show in the history of mankind. But somehow people were unable to find this.
Yeah.
And by the way, Stephanopoulos followed up his Palin-esque answer by saying again, no, you said you were for the invasion. Like when he's going like, I was there, he's like, no, you said you were for the invasion. But then what I liked was Trump's finish. Trump goes, you could see I was not exactly strongly in favor. That's the first time it was ever asked. But that was long before the war started. By the time the war started, I was against it. And in 2003, you have evidence that I was against, and I've been against it for years.
There is a quote,
but we know that we don't have any.
There's a quote of him in March 2013, or 2003. It was at an Oscars after party, and he said that the war is a mess.
But it already started.
But it already started
at that point.
That was the second time he was asked about the war.
Yeah, and that's totally fine that you were eventually against it. That's wonderful.
By the way, what has Donald Trump not said was a mess.
Exactly.
Okay,
Exactly.
That didn't involve Donald Trump. And the real quote, I don't know whether we're being fair or not to him, but was in 2004. So fairly late in 2004, he did come out and say, no, this is going really wrong. I'm definitely against it, etc. Not just the passing. It's a mess, right? It was substantive. It was more substantive in 2004. But by that time, everybody knew it was a mess.
Yes.
We were having a giant election about what a mess it was.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So I mean, there's just that half a sentence. And to be fair to Trump, the Howard Stern answer was, I guess so.
Right,
I guess so.
he's right about that. It was a pretty soft, I'm in favor of it.
Yeah,
Which is still on the wrong side of, I was strongly against it.
He didn't have strong thoughts on it because he doesn't have strong thoughts on any true political issue. Right now, as he's running for president, sure, yeah, he seems like he has strong beliefs or strong ideas, but he doesn't. Everything is shallow. Everything is fake, okay? He's never really thought about foreign policy. He's never really thought about, oh, should we go to war with these countries prior to actually invading these countries? He's not a political figure. He's not a political thinker. He's a hack. He's a clown.
Yeah.
He's a fraud.
He's a mess.
And people keep treating him as if he's like this intelligent person who, oh my God, he might have actually considered the downsides of invading a country. He didn't think about it. He didn't care.
I guarantee you that if you had asked him, not just in 2003 or 2002, but in 04, maybe 06, maybe 08, maybe now, hey, it might be a mess in Iraq because of the difference between the Sunnis and the Shias. Go ahead and tell me what the Sunnis and the Shias are.
Oh my God.
Yeah, okay, good luck.
Yeah. So, by the way, Elizabeth Warren can ask that at the next debate on Fox.
Okay, and this is a very important distinction, guys. Part of the reason that he's successful so far is that he's said, I'm not a politician, right? People hate politicians, that's working. But don't confuse the two things, right? Politicians are run for office, often lie and are greasy and etc. And that's the stuff we don't like, right? But then when they get into office, they're supposed to do policy, and hence it's very important for them to know policy. So yes, Donald Trump is not a politician, like he's never run for office before. I guess you give him credit for that, although he lies like a politician, so I don't know how much credit we're supposed to give him. But the second part, the policy stuff, you don't give him credit for never doing policy. That's a bad thing.
Right.
You don't give him credit for not knowing anything about any policy. That's the bad part. That's not a thing you should be like, oh, you don't know the difference between the Sunni and the Shia? You have no idea what's going on in Iraq or Iran or the Federal Reserve or anything else in the world? Way to go, Donald. You're just as dumb as I am.
He also can't seem to make up his mind about anything. He had some strong statements about the Bush administration, invading Iraq and how terrible it was, and how Bush lied to the American people about weapons of mass destruction, right? He got a little bit of criticism for that, and then now all of a sudden he won't say it. He refuses to say it.
No, he's
a clown.
political. And by the way, this whole thing of being against the Iraq War from the beginning, it's not like that's not political. The reason he's doing it is because he knows the overwhelming majority of the American people think the Iraq War was a mess. Right now, only about 20% thought we should have gone in there. So he's taking the side of 80%. Now, a lot of Republican politicians think that they can't do that because they've been defending that war for so long. But if you're not wedded to that, it is the more political thing to say, I was against it.
I thought I saw some number, and maybe I'm misremembering, from this week of a percentage of close to 60% of Republicans still thought that the Iraq War was a good idea.
Over 60% of Republicans still like George W. Bush. Okay,
I thought they liked the invasion.
There's probably a high correlation.
Anyway, but yeah, maybe I might be misremembering.
And overall, I know the general number. I remember I just read it yesterday or the day before is in the 20s.
No, there would never be two separate poll numbers on anything either. all polls exactly match. That's what we've learned.
Yeah. And also he's coming out strong, and strength always helps with politics. Anyway.
Yeah, two just very quick things. One, it'd be nice if there were a candidate in either party who'd been against the invasion ahead of time, and we had documents for that. If only there was somebody. I can't.
It was Lincoln Chafee.
Voted on it.
Maybe he voted on it and given some speech,
maybe in public.
Maybe in public, like a public speech, not just like in his house. Then my best friend's a guy named Dan Hamilton, and my oldest friend, and he's got a sister, very funny. She teaches stand-up comedy or teaches improv. She's been an improv comedian for a long time. And a couple summers ago, she had an idea for a show, and you said strong thoughts, right? Because Trump does have strong thoughts,
Yes.
right? But they're not based on anything.
They're not educated
But she
thoughts.
thought this should just be a TV show. It's so great, and it was just called Strong Opinions. Like, right? It would just be people, and they would essentially just yell about things they don't really know about. And that show is happening with every single Republican debate.
The five.
Yeah, it is. It's a show with just strong opinions, where there's people yell like, "No, Apple, fix it, release it, invent it, make it happen, and release it to the government so we know the guy's phone." Like nobody thinks, I don't know, we can't. There are implications, privacy, or it doesn't matter. I don't know anything about this technology. I have a very strong opinion about it.
I like that. We might do that on the Young Turks. Bananas! They're definitely great! Much better than grapes!
By the way, we already do it. We just haven't branded it.
And plus, I hope we have a little bit of more substance behind our strong thoughts. A little bit. Okay, we got to take a break here. We're going to come back. We got a lot more news for you guys. Go!
And we gotta.
Big old damn. Are you serious?
these little chickies and little doggies are small, but they're intense.
Oh yeah, small but intense, like my niece Hannah.
Oh yeah. And you take karate?
Yes, she does. Show them how intense you are, Hannah.
Hey, yes. Now finish him.
Bow to her, Peter.
And bow to it.
Bow to her, Peter.
Big flavor and a little package. New little chickies and little doggies. And grab a burrito and drink for $3 delivered in 2 minutes, guaranteed. This is how you Sonic.
This is a little bit of a surprise. They announced 3 releases today. Jared Cook, the tight end, James Laurinaitis, an original draft pick of the Rams, the middle linebacker, and Chris Long, the defensive end. All 3 released. The cap spaces in the neighborhood, they cleared up around $28 million. In a season and a year where cap space goes up and up and up, the Rams are clearing a ton of cap space today.
Well, Chris is my guy, so I'm more upset for him.
Back on the outskirts on the campus of USC today. Fun for everybody. Help support the show. Become a member at tytnetwork.com/join. John, what's next?
Okay, let's do it. Representative James Clyburn, one of the most influential Democrats in South Carolina, has announced his endorsement of Hillary Clinton.
Of course!
I think for some people, but not necessarily that many people. And this, of course, if you've been paying attention to South Carolinian politics, marks a change from just a few weeks ago when he said that he would wait until after the South Carolina primary had concluded to actually give his endorsement, so that he wouldn't influence the results. Perhaps the results are a little bit less certain now, and so he is doing his endorsement, and he listed some of the reasons why. He said it was because of her record on fighting income inequality, advocating for health care, and restoring voting rights as the impetus for his decision. And he specifically talked about the differences in Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders' higher education financing approaches, which you're going to see in this video.
Hillary Clinton's proposals for accessible and affordable higher education will relieve the crushing debt of college loans and preserve the value and viability of historically black colleges and universities. And Hillary Clinton is far and away the best choice to reform our criminal justice system and restore the Voting Rights Act to its rightful place as the most effective guardian of that most sacred right for every eligible American in our communities.
And just to be clear, the reason that he references the historically black colleges there is that because they are private universities, they would not be affected by the free 4-year public education grants that Bernie Sanders would provide.
I'm dying to jump in. Okay, so I listened to him being interviewed by Andrea Mitchell on MSNBC this morning as well, and he made an argument about how Bernie Sanders' program of making tuition at public universities free would hurt these private historical black universities because it would create too much competition and students would rather go to the free universities. That's not a good argument, dude. That's actually a terrible argument, right? Like, I get it. You want to make sure you preserve these historic black universities. I think it's important to do that as well. Believe me, they'll continue to exist, right? You want to give students an option to get affordable free education so they're not burdened by student loan debt. The fact that you're against that is crazy, especially if your whole point is, oh my God, we got to preserve the historical black colleges. Yeah. I hate that argument. It drove me crazy. And also the other thing about Hillary Clinton and how she has been better at tackling income inequality. Really? She has? Like, why is she better at tackling income inequality? Bernie's been more of a warrior on that issue than Hillary Clinton has been.
So, 2 things about that. Now, if you wanted to make a positive statement about Hillary Clinton, there's plenty of things you could say. Her education program, as I've argued over and over, is actually very good, might even be better than Bernie Sanders, in my opinion, okay? So Bernie Sanders gets a lot of credit for providing the possibility of free, it's not free education overall, it's not just
it's free tuition.
Free tuition, yes. Okay. So now, but then if you frame it as somehow Bernie Sanders is against black colleges, well then you're being a dick.
Yes.
Okay, because now you're really, now you could, there's 1,000 different ways to put that. It makes it seem like Bernie Sanders is against black people when that is preposterous. And that is totally not the case. His program would tremendously help young African Americans get free tuition at all these colleges.
His framing
so that is
very
purposely,
intentional.
It's purposely misleading.
Yes.
You're doing it on purpose to make it seem as if Bernie Sanders does not like African Americans and Hillary Clinton does. Now, Hillary Clinton was great in fighting for African Americans, Latinos, etc. earlier in her career, and then you can argue throughout has done some positive things, although for a while she called African American kids super predators. Okay, no, it could have been any kid. Super predators was meant for African American kids. She used it and said you got to bring them to heel. But again, to be fair, there were great moments in Hillary Clinton's career with African Americans. But you don't have to say that while implying that somehow Bernie Sanders is not for African Americans or is not for income inequality, because then you become not credible and obviously biased. So now let me explain why Clyburn decided to endorse Hillary Clinton when he said he wouldn't endorse anybody. Number one, the endorsements usually go to the person, especially in the beginning when Hillary Clinton looked like what the press kept calling the presumptive nominee. If you're more likely to win, you're going to get more endorsements because those guys want something in return later. Okay, that's called politics, and I get it. I'm not overly against that. There's a little bit of horse trading going on. If you have pre-existing relationships, and the Clintons have pre-existing relationships, you can call it friendships, or you can say, hey, they did a favor, they got a favor back, with almost everybody in Washington that keep it real. Now, despite that, Clyburn had not done the endorsement yet. Now, as Hillary really needs that endorsement, here's the part that's very important that almost nobody else talks about. If you cross Bernie Sanders and you endorse someone else, in this case Hillary Clinton, there will be no consequences. Bernie Sanders will not come for you. He'll not punish you. The Clintons have a list, right? Yeah. They have long memories, and they do punish people. Now, again, I get it, and that's actually could be argued as strong politics, right? But you know that you're not going to have to worry about that with Bernie Sanders. And then the other part of it is Bernie Sanders will not do you any favors. So when he gets into office, he's going to go and push for his policy. And if you say, hey, you know what, I'd like this, he's going to say, well, that sounds like corruption. I'm not going to do that. Whereas Hillary Clinton will be like, oh, you were on the nice list. Yeah. Here's your bridge, here's your highway, here's etc. Again, there's a case to be made for it if you like that kind of politics, but that's what leans almost all the endorsements to go to Hillary Clinton as opposed to Bernie Sanders.
It's incredible how much you get punished for not being a dirty politician. Like, the dirtier you are, the more you get rewarded. It's the most frustrating thing.
I think you guys are doing a little bit of what Clyburn did. I think you have a really strong point that there was no need to make the point about historically black colleges. That the need was, I'm South Carolina's far and away most important black politician, and I'm speaking to my constituents, and make sure you turn out in droves for Hillary Clinton. I think you delivered that point with the endorsement. Like, that was enough. So, but, you know, he's not, first of all, Jim Clyburn is not, I thought he was retiring. Maybe he's sticking around longer than I thought. I mean, I don't think he's looking to get paid, by the Clinton machine.
No, but to be fair, Ben, sorry, I know I'm interrupting, but his daughter works in Washington circles, and yes, she gets hired, she doesn't get hired.
She was on
things are relevant.
She was on the FCC.
Yes, that's right.
I got it. They're a connected family, but also that goes to they've been connected for a while. That the Clyburn-Clinton political alliance has been there for some time. Yeah. So, and I'm no doubt that if there were Clinton people here, they could make an argument that plenty of people who didn't endorse the Clintons have not been cut off from Washington life by the Clintons afterwards. Yeah. But
it's the timing that makes people.
But the timing also comes down. I don't know who released this story. I just think these things are much smaller than you guys end up giving them credit for. There was stories circulated over the weekend when it was said that Clyburn, who had said throughout, he never said I'm definitely not going. He said I probably would endorse. And obviously, at some point, if you have political power, his time for using it ends after Saturday. That's true. You better go ahead and fire your gun. There's no point in endorsing 2 weeks after the Democratic primary. But stories came out that Clyburn was torn, and that Clyburn his head said one thing and his heart said something else. We know what that meant. His head said Clinton, she's most likely to win. She's got experience. But his heart meant, I'm hearing Bernie Sanders, and I like it. I dig it. And so those stories got circulated out there, and then clearly pressure came to bear. Hey, that's essentially endorsing Bernie Sanders. Now a longtime Clinton ally, the most powerful black politician in South Carolina, isn't speaking, and you're talking about your torn between your heart and your head. So he specifically said in his endorsement, there have been stories about heart and head. I've always been with Hillary Clinton. So I don't know. Maybe the Clinton people leaked it to double reverse and sneak. I don't know. But
Ben, so I agree. And these days endorsements not only almost mean nothing, but are usually counterproductive. South Carolina is a rare case that's not the case.
Yeah, this
Clyburn might be able to turn out African Americans for Hillary Clinton, so it actually could be slightly relevant. But it does go towards our politician point, which is apparently, according to the reports, his heart was with Bernie Sanders. Not only did he not go with his heart, he then wanted to say, "Oh, come here for a second for the watch," right? And Hillary Clinton sends her regards, and instead talked about, "Oh, he's against black colleges."
Yeah, that framing really frustrated.
I got you. I'm sure it frustrates you. This is a dirty, ugly business.
Yeah, but
There's a winner and there's
I'm not including this story in the rundown because it's ugly. It's also inaccurate, and that's the final point I want to make on this. We keep alluding to the education policies. At some point, maybe next week, we need to do an actual extensive rundown of the different policies.
Yes.
If you say that making the public colleges free is going to cause people to then go to those public colleges instead of the historically black colleges, well, then it would seem like then, in response, those historically black colleges, as well as other private colleges, would be forced to finally cut the cost of tuition.
Yes.
And that would drive down the cost of private universities as well, which is what we keep saying for decades we're going to do eventually. Now, I think that her setting up the $25 billion fund in her plan to incentivize people going to the historically black colleges and to improve them is perfectly fine. I think you should have something like that. But just a quick intro to the differences in the policy. Her policy requires every student to do work study, which I know from doing work study means that your grades go down and you do less well in school. Her plan, and not Bernie's plan, requires every family to contribute, to continue to pay based on an assumption of what is reasonable for that family to pay. And finally, the point that she keeps making about Bernie Sanders' plan is, my plan isn't going to allow Donald Trump's kids to go to public colleges for free. Well, I didn't see a lot of billionaires' kids going to UConn when I was there. I don't think that'll change under this new plan, and that's extremely important historically in America, because we know when programs are given to everybody, they tend to be very hard to change politically and cut, like Social Security and Medicare and things like that. When you instead make programs that don't benefit the rich and only benefit people of lower means, then those are welfare programs, and eventually they end up on the chopping block.
You glossed over what I think is the biggest downfall of Hillary Clinton's education proposal. Her proposal focuses very heavily on the income of the parents, right?
Yeah.
And the reason why that's an issue, and I know that you kind of disagree with me a little bit, Cenk, is because it assumes that the parents are going to help pay for that student's education. Real quick story, there was one student that I went to school with. Her dad was a handyman. 1 year, he made a lot of money working as a handyman. It's like freelance pretty much, right? And then next year, he's not making any money at all. He's having a hard time finding work. Well, the university's application looked at how much money he made during the lucrative year, and they're like, oh yeah, you can totally afford the tuition. So the student got screwed. The parents couldn't help her pay for her tuition, and that's it. She had to take out loans, and she was screwed in the end. So I hate that. I think it makes it a lot easier if you just make tuition free at public universities.
I don't know why you guys hate black people.
Yeah. I don't know. Why do you hate this store? What do you have against Hampton? I just feel in 20 seconds, and I have nothing to say about this, maybe forever, because I can use this point every single time. To me, this is like healthcare. If you have two Democratic politicians who are both significantly interested in education reform, I agree. Here's what they would do. They'd work out a deal. Clearly, Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders could come to an agreement if they were the people deciding this, and they both sign off. They think, that's good from your part. No, that's good from your part. So hammering each other over whose plan is better at this point is silly. They're both getting A's. They're the first people to talk about it in forever. And I would probably agree also that who knows whether Hillary would even be talking about it if Bernie hadn't. But she is, and she has a plan.
Yeah. All right, what's that? Okay, probably going to be the final story of the day.
For the first hour.
Okay. Oh, for the first hour.
Yeah, you call.
Sorry. We've got a great second hour. Probably far better than this first hour.
Go ahead.
Anyway, I was waiting for the camera to come in. Hi, guys. Anyway, this is the election where we're finally focusing on the corrosive effect of big money on politics, and we now have one more issue that we can add to that list, and once again, it involves the Koch brothers. This time, they're coming for your electric cars, I say to the 1% of you who have electric cars. There's a new group that's being set up with fossil fuel backing, and it hopes to spend about $10 million per year to boost petroleum-based transportation fuels and attack government subsidies for electric vehicles, according to insiders in the refining industry. The group's broad mission will be to make the public aware of all the benefits of petroleum-based transportation fuels, because maybe they've never been in a car in the past century. The current administration has a bias towards phasing out these fuels according to that same source. So this is not necessarily a source who loves electric cars, being as they are in the refining industry, and thinking that Obama is trying to destroy oil. And so we have a little bit more information about what they're trying to do and why they're trying to do it. So they're worried about state and community subsidies for those electric cars, which can be significant. All told, in some states, you could save $10,000 with those subsidies doing what subsidies are intended to do, to help an industry when that industry is new to get a foothold until costs come down and it's competitive without the subsidies, which we're going to circle back around to the subsidies that they don't have a problem with. And they say that overall electric vehicle adoption has started slowly, but it's certainly going to follow an exponential growth trajectory. Everybody assumes that in 5 to 10 years it'll be much higher. Once electric vehicle adoption hits a critical mass, I think it will take refiners, petroleum producers, and automakers by surprise, according to this, in the case, is an insider in energy and environmental field. Now, the reason we say that this has to do with Koch brothers is it's being headed by James Mahoney, who has long been considered a confidant of the Koch brothers and is a member of their company's board. And he's currently traveling around to different oil industry, the sort of meta industries that control that industry, and asking for money to run these attack ads.
Okay, so I thought the Koch brothers were all about ideology and ideas. Now, what's interesting is this is actually their corporate arm who appears to want to go and lobby against their competition. Kind of sounds like crony capitalism. It kind of sounds like they've got a dog in this fight. It kind of sounds like millions, actually billions of dollars are on the line here, and that they're lobbying for their own personal financial benefit. It ain't got nothing to do with ideas and ideology. I hope you weren't that much of a sucker if you're a conservative or a libertarian. Oh no, they're really good libertarians. They just care about the ideology. Oh, it happens to benefit them to the tune of billions of dollars. What a coincidence! But I'm sure they have goodness in their heart. So, look, then that leads to the question of, okay, as John alluded to, you're against subsidies because you're a libertarian. Now, what's interesting is the oil industry gets a lot of subsidies. On average, they've gotten about $4.7 billion in subsidies every year. Every year. You want to cut those? Oh, you don't want to cut those. Isn't that a funny coincidence? All of a sudden, they're not so libertarian.
And also, what's the argument for those subsidies? The argument when they make a legitimate argument for the subsidies is not, we just want to get rich. They're like, no, we need to be incentivized for new ways of doing things. Okay, that's right. That's what this is.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, to that argument, here's what's not a new way of doing things. Oil. Okay, it's the most profitable companies in the world. It's not a new thing. The struggling oil business. Let's pop it up a little bit because it might do us some good in the future. No, the electric cars are exactly the kind of companies that need a little bit of subsidy or a little bit of boost so they can get going, right? Yeah. But if you say, hey, no, I don't care, no subsidies for anybody, that's fine. But that's not what they're saying. Subsidies, billions of dollars for us, nothing for our competition. That is the definition of crony capitalism.
You know what they could do, and John brought this up during our production meeting, instead of trying to fight it, why don't they invest in it and make even more money?
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's a market for it. Why don't they invest a little in renewable energy? They have the money for it. Instead of taking all the money that they have and lobbying against it, if they invested, wouldn't that be more lucrative for them in the little years that they have left?
I think the answer is no. I think that lobbying and preventing change for as long as possible is but it gives you an idea of just how much money they're making.
Now, remember, they killed the electric car, not the Koch brothers, but the old car industry and the oil companies, etc., in the past. And if you've seen that wonderful documentary about who killed the electric car, and you know what they did? They delayed it for well over a decade. And in that decade, they made billions upon billions upon billions of dollars. Now, when you go into a new industry, you got to compete with everybody.
Yeah.
When you've already established yourself in the old industry and it's a cash cow, and you've got all the politicians in your back pocket, that's easy money.
Yeah, and bear in mind, when we're talking about the big money that's in play here, Koch Industries makes $115 billion in revenue every single year. And the oil refining, pipeline, exploration operations are a gigantic portion of
that. Keep that shot on John for a sec. Don't change the shot, because in a related story, this just in, which is the Koch brother on the right?
Charles. Charles is with the glass.
In a related story, Robert Redford will play Charles Koch.
Oh, unfortunately, that's absolutely true.
Nothing is true. We've not said anything truer today.
Okay, so now one more thing about this. If you support the oil industry and you kill alternative energies, you know who else you help? Saudi Arabia and the Middle East and Wahhabism and fundamentalist Islam. Yeah. So apparently the Koch brothers support the jihadis. This is how they get their money. Remember ISIS? Trump was talking about it all day. Why don't we bomb their oil? All their money's coming from oil. That's ISIS. And the Koch brothers are saying, let's kill the electric car so that we can help oil. Yes, I make money. So does ISIS. So do the Saudis. So do fundamentalist Muslims. I don't care. But remember, the Koch brothers, their original fortune came from their dad, who worked with the Nazis and Stalin. That is an absolute fact. Read Jane Mayer's book about it. Okay, so you think this family has problem making money in morally dubious ways? Yeah. ISIS is nothing compared to the Nazis. They're like, yeah, this is what the Kochs do.
Unfortunately, thanks to Marco Rubio and Donald Trump, people think ISIS is worse than the Nazis. But this is probably a stupid idea because I know that we'd be trying to appeal to people who absolutely love their trucks. But couldn't some Republican candidate run on, well, we spent $2 trillion in the war in Iraq. How about we spend 1% of that? You hate their oil that's underneath. You hate how, like, oh, God, I guess theoretically we could try to take it. But in the meantime, they're pumping that oil, and they're making all this money, and they're funding terrorism. Why don't we spend a couple of $1 billion a year to make all of that worthless? We just move on from oil, and they will be sitting on top of a bunch of extremely dirty liquid that's suddenly not worth anything.
Yeah, that would be
on that,
phenomenal.
Republicans. It would be a terrible message. It would be a totally xenophobic, racist message. But it's better than the current one, which involves bombing and killing.
And by the way, if we then switched over to alternative energy and built it here with plenty of wind and sun and electric cars, etc., all that here, that would also create a lot more jobs. Yeah. So now the oil industry is mature. Whatever jobs they're going to create, they've largely already created. Now, these new industries are growing and adding jobs all the time. Do the Koch brothers care about our economy? They keep saying, oh, we're Republicans. Oh, we care about the economy and we're going to make things right. No, you don't care about that. You'll kill jobs. You'll help the Saudis. You'll help ISIS. If all in the name of making an extra buck for the Koch brothers. Yeah. By the way, the only good news out of all this is a big portion of this is lobbying, but the other big portion is messaging campaign. Okay, your messaging campaign could easily work in D.C., but that's really called lobbying, right? Good luck trying to sell the American people on, no, man, oil. It's the future.
But you know,
like young people are like, oh man, I love oil. And now that the Koch brothers pushed it, I'm more pro oil.
You know, we got a little glimpse of the early part of that campaign. That kid who wrote the book, Alex Epstein, that might be his name. Mm-hmm. You know, that I interviewed for a friend, and he wrote a book, the moral case for fossil fuels. You know, and he's just, you know, I mean, he's a put together, polished kid, and he's got it down. They you know, and he has nothing to do with Koch brothers or anything.
But I want to read that book now.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and it I mean, I couldn't get through it, and it was, you know, a lot of contrived arguments, but they're prepared to make this case, and so it's already begun. He does it. He engages in debates with that main climate scientologist. What's his name? That guy.
Scientologist.
The climate.
Tom Cruise. Yeah, he's got a dog in this.
Yeah, you know, we had a climate. He's worried about global warming, Tom Cruise. He always has been.
Yeah, it's all the thetans that heats up the atmosphere.
No, I think that he's been sent on a mission that if he doesn't get this certain box by a certain time, that this evil guy,
something like that.
No, but that mission's impossible. All right, guys. We're going to take a break here. When we come back, in essence, the second hour for you guys here. And we've got, speaking of people with dubious morality, a very rich person in San Francisco decides that he's got a good target, the homeless. He's going to make them pay. So let's find out about that when we return. Okay.
It took me so many tries to get through the days there. Oh yeah. And then
Welcome back to the Young Turks. Jake Huber and Manguzanica Kasparian and Johnny Pye at USC. Now, I'm going to read you a couple of quick tweets, members of the day, and then Anna's got some stories for you guys. Spooby Armstrong, with a fascinating first name, writes in, the internet has endorsed Bernie Sanders. Funny how Google works. So, yes, what would you rather have, the endorsement of all those politicians or the endorsement of the entire internet? And I would argue the internet. Okay, Lauren writes in, income alone doesn't tell the story of what a person can afford. Their debt can be huge.
medical expenses or
Right, they might not be able to pay tuition. So backing Anna on that one. And then No Way backs John, says, John, with the best point I have heard from anyone recently.
No, I don't believe this.
Yeah, already. This
You don't
is
even have to say
factually.
which. I just
Yeah, factually
Don't even
correct.
read that tweet. Let's move on.
And they say fight terrorism with #green energy. Yes.
What was John's point?
Let's make the oil worthless.
Oh,
right.
That was actually my fourth or fifth best point, but thank you for acknowledging it, though.
And I thought I said the same thing. But anyways, okay. And the members.
Yeah.
Once again, you get no credit for being right.
Yeah.
Once again. I can't catch a break, especially on this show.
No, I listen to Howard Stern. You actually said that you supported my idea.
But it was the first time I got asked.
First time.
Okay. Gilbert Rodriguez is member number 1110, and member number 1111 is Jonathan George. So Gilbert and Jonathan, you guys rock the world. You too can become a member at tytnetwork.com/join. Apparently, John and Anna did the last executive producer meeting phone call. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
I had done a couple before that. Now you guys got me all jealous. Oh yeah, I'm going to do the next one. So for the guys who pay more to help support the show, we do a call with them once a quarter, and like, hey, and then we take their advice, input, etc. Okay. Apparently, Ben's not going to be on the call. Most honest show in the country. Okay. All right, we move forward. Anna, go.
All right. A wealthy man in Silicon Valley is calling out homeless people because he's tired of having to look at them, and now he's getting a lot of criticism for it on the internet. Justin Keller, the founder of Commando.io, is the person who wrote an open letter to the mayor of San Francisco, and he argued that the real problem was the effect the homeless have on the people around them who had, quote, earned the right to live in San Francisco. Now I'm going to read you excerpts from his open letter, just to give you a sense of why people are so upset with him. He says, I know people are frustrated about gentrification happening in the city, but the reality is, we live in a free market society. The wealthy, working people have earned their right to live in the city. They went out, got an education, work hard, and earned it. Now here's where it gets really bad. I shouldn't have to worry about being accosted. I shouldn't have to see the pain, struggle, and despair of homeless people to and from my way to work every day. I want my parents, when they come visit, to have a great experience and enjoy this special place. And then he says, I don't have a magic solution. It is a very difficult and complex situation, but somehow during Super Bowl, almost all of the homeless and riffraff seem to have up and vanish.
So, I love that. I don't have a magic solution, but I do have one. And it's, get them out of here.
Yeah.
Take them somewhere else.
It's okay, man, because they're riffraff.
Yeah, they're riffraff.
Okay, now look, there's a couple of different ways you could have written this. And if you said, look, the homeless situation in San Francisco is out of control, and we all have to do something about it, that probably would have been well received, right? Like, because it's not like anyone who's gone to San Francisco doesn't realize that the homeless situation in San Francisco is out of control. We all see it. You could be the biggest liberal in the world and say, we got to do something about this.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. And then I thought, okay, the whole earned it stuff, he shouldn't have gone there. I do declare I've earned it.
Because it makes the assumption that everyone who's homeless in San Francisco is lazy and they're bums, and
they earned that.
They earned that, exactly. Yeah. And that's not the case. Especially when you go to San Francisco, you can see it. It's right in front of you. A lot of them have mental health issues. A lot of them have addiction issues. And so to act as though you guys were all on an equal footing and they messed it up and so they deserve the situation they're in is beyond insensitive. It's just ignorant.
So all of that would have been bad enough if he hadn't then gone to, I shouldn't have to see their struggle and their despair.
See, that's
like, oh, I'm sorry. Were they bothering you?
Yeah.
Like, look,
I don't like seeing despair.
Like, don't say that, dude. Then it became like an onion piece. Like, it was so over the top that I was like, hey, Anna, I wanted to ask you, you sure this is on the level? It sounds like he's like, this is what, like, way out of control rich people would say, I shouldn't have to see the despair of the poor.
The riffraff.
I think it's the riffraff that does that. It's a line out of, like, Rocky Horror. Like, oh, the peasantry. Like, when I drive by my BMW, I throw some coins at them. But I actually, like, the line about I shouldn't have to see the despair and the pain, and all of that could have been inside of, and that is why I, as the owner of Commando.io, are setting up a homeless shelter, because no one should have to see that, including them, including their families, the children who are homeless, should not have to see the pain and the despair, and that's why we should solve it. Instead, it's that, I know it's a problem, it's always going to be a problem, but let's please just, get them away. It's like he's treating them like they're radioactive waste. We got to store it somewhere, but I don't want it near my town, and that's terrible. They're people.
I think the where this goes wrong is and it's a wrong way. First of all, this guy, you couldn't bear to be in a room with this guy. I mean, this guy's bad for America. He's the guy we ought to deport. He's the country. We'd get a little better. What do? They
I shouldn't have to see this.
Apparently, some sort of server management.
Oh, it's not an underwear issue.
I don't. No. You'll make a lot of money off of people.
That's what was confusing me. I was like, this guy's like an underwear magnet. But the server thing, that makes more sense. The residents of this amazing city, he writes, no longer feel safe. Again, that's a fair opener, right?
Yeah.
I know people are frustrated about gentrification happening in the city. Okay, so it all comes on where he goes after the comma. And this is just the way this kind of guy thinks. But the reality is we live in a free market society. Like, he lays down a fact, and that's the end of that fact. Like, no, that's it. Capitalism wins no matter what. It's unchecked. It's unfettered. That's it. I won. You lose. This is how it is. When, of course, that's not how it is. I mean, yes, we live in a free market society, but I got news for you. We have 1,000 checks and balances on that free market society. The Koch brothers want there to be 2. We want there to be 1,500, right? Bernie Sanders wants there to be 1 billion. Right? But, so, I mean, that's a debate, but he just thinks that, well, we live in a free market society, so I have money, I have power, gentrification, I get to do it. I get to move everybody out, and I get to send them anywhere that is out of my sight line and put them into the sight line of people who have less money than I do, and therefore less power.
So I think the most interesting part of this is what we've talked a lot about on the show, which is the different bubbles that people live in. And in this bubble, there's a lot of conversations about how we earned it.
Right.
And part of the reason for that, to be fair to them, is that a lot of these guys work super hard.
A lot of them earned it.
Yeah, they work 80 hours, and a lot of them are entrepreneurs, 100 hours, etc. But that doesn't mean that other people are riffraff and dirtbags and degenerates. In fact, in 2013, Greg Goatman, who was the CEO of Angel Hack, called them degenerates, the homeless, and said that they have to realize, quote, that it's a privilege to be in the civilized part of town. Okay. So now, to be fair to Goatman, he then later said that was the worst mistake of my life. I shouldn't have said that, which is a great response to saying something terrible, right? And then looked into, well, okay, then what can we do constructive about the homeless problem in San Francisco? And found out, and this is funny, you give them homes.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I know it sounds like, no, what are you, Bernie Sanders? Oh, yeah, you're just going to give them. No, Salt Lake City. It's not like Utah is overly liberal. Salt Lake City is more liberal than the rest of Utah. But they did this program that surprised me. Anna and I covered on the show before. It turns out that building homes where they could have reasonable, safe places to live is actually cost the government a lot less money than the other issues, and works relatively well as long as they are clean enough, safe enough that people will come back to them. And now they're thinking maybe in San Francisco we should do that. Yes, you should. And it's not just. And I get it, man. You don't want to be accosted. I got friends who got spit on by homeless people in San Francisco. So I've been there where people, homeless guys, have started to come at me.
Yeah,
right?
They're aggressive and they're persistent.
Yes, and so and it's because a lot of them have mental health issues.
Yeah.
I don't think, degenerate riffraff. I think we got to get that guy some help.
Absolutely, yeah. That's what a normal, decent human being would think. But, just quickly going back to the Salt Lake City story, of course people have this negative knee-jerk reaction to it because, oh, well, I worked hard to earn my home. Why are we just going to give homes away to people who didn't earn it, right? But what ended up happening to people who have homes in that area is their property values went up. Because if you take homeless people, you put them in homes, you give them an opportunity where they can find jobs and be in a safe environment, well, then you're not going to see a bunch of people on the streets anymore, and property values go up. So it's a win-win for everyone.
Also, if you're so upset about people who didn't earn it getting a home, then sell all your assets and be homeless and get a free home.
Yeah.
I got news for you. You're not going to do that.
Wait.
Right.
But, back to that earning point. They went out, got an education, worked hard, and earned it. And so, yeah, I'm like Cenk, and like all of us, I'm sympathetic to that, and there's admiration that goes into earning it. But earning it gives you the right to live where you want. It doesn't. It doesn't give you the right to send other people to live where they don't want.
10-second point. Just because this is another example of a conservative free market. I earned it, they didn't earn. How many minutes of research into his background would you have to do to find government loans that allowed him to go to college or that helped him to make his first company. Commando.io, you don't think that he had any help from the SBA or anything like that?
He bought his first pair of underwear. He didn't buy it himself.
And I got news for you. In Silicon Valley, everybody's got investors. It's all built on VCs and all that. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a pretty good system. So somebody helped you, right? Yeah. And you built a good business, and that's why they invested, and then they made money, presumably, although you sell invisible underwear. But it's not like, I did it all on my own. And if you did, that means your dad was really rich.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
All right. MAC Cosmetics got a, I suppose, not so surprising reaction from a photo that they posted on their Instagram page featuring a black woman's lips. Now, MAC Cosmetics, of course, is a cosmetics company, and they were featuring the woman's lips to show a deep color purple lipstick. Well, unfortunately, some of the comments were not so kind and extremely racist. Now, if you take a look at some of those comments, which MAC has now deleted, some people said that they unfollowed just because of that picture. There was also a longer comment that seems like it was trolling. I don't know whether or not this was meant to be a real comment, but black women will never be as beautiful as white women, yada, yada, yada. You can see it. One person says that they're fish lips. Just a number of insanely hideous comments. So, again, another example of a black woman getting criticized for her natural features, when at the same time you have white women like Kylie Jenner injecting her lips and getting celebrated for having extremely thick lips.
Yeah. Or at the very least, non-black women.
Yes.
Like, nobody's like, Sofia Vergara, I hate your gigantic lips. Like, nobody says that. They only say that to black women.
Who follows MAC on Instagram?
A lot of people.
Racist people who really like makeup.
Why? Why would you follow it? I don't. What's the point?
They probably offer deals.
I don't get it either.
They get followed because they advertise their latest products and people decide whether or not they want to buy it.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I was thinking like,
I don't get subjected to enough advertising, so I can see that. Yeah, I'm going to volunteer for more ads.
I follow Commando underwear.
Just showed commercials. I wouldn't interrupt it with some sort of entertainment program.
I would say the two things that get the most follows on Instagram specifically are health and fitness type stuff, which is why you get a ton of pictures of unbearable women posing with protein shakes, and then you also have makeup artists.
Yeah.
So this doesn't surprise me.
I love that this is exposed to human behavior that Ben can't stand. Following advertising.
The racism I don't mind.
I think you missed the larger story.
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple of things on this. First of all, I actually think people are flipping out too much over it. Oh, we found racist online. Yeah. Really? You don't say, right? You could have almost had racist online on anything. Like, put any picture of a black person online, and some racist douchebag. No, a dozen racist douchebags will show up. They're like, oh, no. And they'll also
go to town hall. Yeah. Do a search for Obama. Read the comments. There it is.
Yeah, that's a conservative website. And then those will also be the first guys to say, there's no racism. You guys talk about racism too much, and I hate her black lips.
Yeah.
So I know those guys exist, and it's super not surprising that they would do it even to a benign picture of lips. And by the way, if that guy's not trolling, he's like, and you find white women more attractive than black women, good for you.
Have at it.
Yeah, go for it, big guy. But you don't have to gratuitously come online and be like, I don't like your black lips.
I know, they're just ugly, hideous people. But look, the point that I want to make about it more than the point that racist people exist, because of course they exist, is just this huge double standard when it comes to the beautiful natural features of black women and how they're constantly criticized for it. But when it comes to white women, if they alter their natural features so they look more black, they get celebrated for it, right? Whether it's kinking their hair or injecting their lips or injecting their butts, whatever it is.
Although honestly, with the Jenners and the Kardashians recently, it's somewhat more fair. They get criticized for it.
I was going to say, I bet
the hair, for the lips, for the ass.
There are young girls, teenage girls right now that are asking their parents for lip injections because Kylie Jenner injected them.
I got it, but I bet Kylie Jenner's Instagram account has a ton of racism in it. Because, Chloe's does. Chloe's got it for most of her life. I only do that because of Howard, because I can't believe I drove around the block listening to Khloe Kardashian. I said that Howard started as a child. I couldn't believe it. But you know, so I mean, I hear you. I mean, obviously, there's a double standard there. But I think John's right. I suspect that they get plenty of that racist venom too. Like, why are you trying to look hot? Or why are you trying to look black?
Yeah, I mean, they do get criticism, don't get me wrong, but when they're looked at, it's like, wow, look at how beautiful they are.
No,
you know?
all I'm asking from the internet is, if you're the dude making comments about black people, then don't turn around and tell us that there's no racism. Because you can't have it both ways. Right? You can't say, oh, look at those ugly black lips and ugly black features, and black people are always committing crime, and black people are doing this. You go, why are you guys complaining about racism? Because of you, dick.
Yeah. By the way, since when was it unattractive to have full lips? Right?
Like never.
Like when has anyone ever said in the history of lips, like, oh my god, those lips are they're full, they're unattractive?
Your lips are super thin and hot.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, if you don't put lipstick, I can't even see them.
Yeah. When are full stomachs going
Little
to get back in
sandpaper?
Yeah.
All right, forward.
All right, a rare dolphin died on a beach after beachgoers found it and took various selfies with it. Now, we have a video of what occurred. Let's take a quick look at it. Now that video is mostly to show you guys that the dolphin was alive. There were some rumors that the dolphin had washed ashore and it was dead to begin with. No, the dolphin was alive. And the type of dolphin is rare. It's known as the La Plata dolphin. And they're considered vulnerable and their population is in decline, although exact numbers remain unclear. Although they are one of the world's smallest species of dolphins, they can live to be up to 20 years old and are highly intelligent.
Yeah. So look, I get it.
What happened? I mean,
they started taking selfies and they started petting it and
passing it around.
Right.
I mean, it's supposed to be in
water.
air.
Right. And then it was out of the water too long, so it died.
It overheated.
And so dolphins have to be in the water, right? After a while, they can be out for a little bit. It's like somebody cut off our oxygen supply to pet us. And they're like, oh, nice human. Here, let's take a picture with a human. I can't breathe, right? They're not bad people. They probably didn't know, right? But there's a big crowd. It's a big crowd. Somebody could have Googled it or raised their hand and be like,
people don't correct when crowds do.
We should at some point put him back in the water, right?
By the way, so the argument that like, oh, don't worry, it was already dead. Passing around a dead dolphin also a little bit messed up. I wouldn't do that either.
With a dead dolphin.
Yeah.
I know Instagram. Nope.
So, look, then this article honestly got a little too environmentally conscious for me because I'm a bad guy. They're like, don't go near the dolphins because it disturbs their natural environment, and in order to avoid your boat, they might have to go a little further for a fish, and then they might get hungry. Okay, dude, I like to see the dolphins in the water. Okay, when I see a dolphin in the water, okay, yeah, maybe I take a picture of it. Okay, and I show my kids. Get off my ass. At the same time, don't take the dolphin out and kill it. Okay, can we find some balance in our lives?
But also, there's the whole thing about not just enjoying the moment. Like, you see the dolphin, you enjoy it, you leave it alone, you move on with your life, right? Having to be in a picture with the dolphin, like, what is it about us needing to take pictures of every moment of our lives in order to show everyone that it actually happened? It happened. Okay, it's in our memories. Let's just enjoy that and move on.
Yeah, I'm a hypocrite on that because you're right. But look, I was among I didn't offend as much as other people. I went to see Bruce Springsteen last night in a different city.
How many times have you seen Bruce Springsteen?
45, 30, something like that. Yeah. But so I see him. Every tour is different. No, but
I love how much you love him.
No, but I mean, every tour is different. They're doing a specific thing. I mean, they get a new album. You know.
Agree to disagree.
No, I mean, all Turks are the same. They're all.
I'll go with you.
Yeah. No, I mean, every tour is totally different, and it's I mean, it's like saying
how I feel about Gwen Stefani.
No, every
Turk I know in LA is an overweight entrepreneur. You might be right.
I already saw. You know what? I saw a George Clooney movie. I don't need to see another.
Well, some people.
From what I've heard of Hail Caesar. Maybe you should that way.
So anyway, so I go to see Springsteen last night, and I had good standing. I was on the floor, and and when he comes close, and you start taking pictures, right? And I thought the same thing. I'm like, guys, you're not like this is great. This is a moment. Like people go to this because men cry and women get excited, and everybody. If you feel
Okay, now
closer,
definitely not.
no, you feel closer to your, like, no, I made friends with these crazy guys that got super stoned last night.
okay,
I mean, guys, you're bonding, you're talking to people, you're giving hugs to strangers. It's nice. You feel good about humanity for 3 hours, and then, but then because I sing these songs to my daughter, I FaceTime while he was singing 2 of those songs. And so there I am holding the phone, and Josie's listening, and I'm like,
So that's different.
thank you. Okay.
That's different because that's like
at least we were having a different kind of moment.
Sharing that.
That was sharing.
That allowed her to be there in the moment, which is exactly what we're saying is important in the moment.
Yeah.
Right.
It's when it's like the fireworks, and you have to see. And I know, I'm sure that if you go back to my Instagram at some point, I took a picture or a video of fireworks, but no one has ever like gone back like, hey, 2 years ago, I think I took a video of fireworks. Let me watch that again. Nobody's ever done that. You don't do that. And as Louis C.K. has pointed out, we were brought into this world with amazing high def eyes. And you can watch in many frames per second real life going on around you.
Is Louis C.K. Have you seen his show, Louis? Because I only watched 1 episode. Yeah,
that's good.
Once I saw 1, I didn't want to watch another episode. I saw a show with that Jerry Seinfeld guy, and he had his 3 friends. It looked funny, but I stopped after 1.
Again, did you take Bruce out of the water and accidentally kill him?
I did. We were passing him around.
Okay.
By the way, but he did body surf over the crowd, so people were taking pictures, passing around. Put him back on stage! Put him back on stage or he'll die!
I went and saw Louis C.K. At the place nearby. He was doing his stand-up. Would it not have been weird if I had gone back and seen that same show 2 or 3 more times?
Well, if you'd seen the exact same show 2 or 3 more times for a comedian, I suppose, but I suspect it would have been a little different. But no, not if you got something out of it.
Okay.
No, I mean,
no, we're largely.
Okay, you're consistent.
Yeah. No, we're largely agree. Ben's a weirdo.
I did see Star Wars 3 times.
Going to many Bruce Springsteen concerts is the least weird thing anyone's ever done. All right, we got to take a quick break here. We'll come back. We got more stories for you, including the fake gynecologist.
Okay.
Young Turks. Let me read some hashtag TYT live tweets for you guys. Naeem Bouchard says, Young Turks should do more field trips. Okay. Returning with the main theme tune several times a show is kind of awesome. Oh, I see. That's true. You don't normally return with that same theme. Okay. One to grow on, Naeem. Thank you. And I like field trips.
Yeah, they're
like
fun. A little change of pace.
You know what? We're going to do a massive field trip later this year when we go to the Democratic Convention and the Republican Convention.
Change of pace.
Change of pace. One's in Philly. Oh, I'm going to gorge on cheesesteaks all week long.
And I'm going to try to meet Andre Santaros.
You're gonna put some of that. You're gonna put some of that weight back on.
That was mean.
Okay, I'll have you know, Ben. This morning I was like, ooh, lost 6 pounds for my height, which puts me back at the disastrous shape I was in 2.5 years ago.
You lost 6 pounds from your height?
Height. Oh, height. Like, so I don't even want to tell you.
He's shorter now as a result of losing 6 pounds.
That is exciting, though, cheesesteak. That's a good, that's a fun thought.
Oh, I got to take you guys to the best cheesesteak place, not the ones that all the tourists go to. Okay. Anyway, everybody from that town says that. Okay, I know nothing. I know nothing says no homeless person could possibly be as disgusting as this entitled tech bro. Fuck him. Sarah says, I love how Jenk's posh voice and British voice are the same.
Yes.
But I got news for you. It's also the same as my Irish accent, French accent, and Russian accent. But my Indian accent's pretty good. Which I'm not allowed to do anymore. It's not PC. Okay. Yeah. But top of the morning to you. All right. And James says that was the Irish one. James says it makes me so angry that a group of assholes killed an endangered dolphin for their own fucking vanity. James, I hear you, and here's
probably an accident.
Yeah, they didn't mean it, but it was part of their vanity.
Sort of.
Yeah. Here's who agrees with you, James. John Graziano. A long time.
And Sam Shocker.
Yes. Oh my God, what John and Sam would do to those dolphin killers. Hey, and they might Ted Cruz them.
Yeah.
Sam would take a selfie with one of the corpses.
The people.
Yeah.
Not of the dolphin. No.
I'm with them. We don't know enough details. Like, it didn't seem malice.
No, it's not malice either. But Graziano would torture them. He would have malice. Okay, all right, let's move forward.
All right. An 18-year-old man has been caught practicing as a doctor when he did not have a license to be a doctor. Now, the crazy thing about this story is it was the second time that he got caught pretending to be a doctor. His name is Malachi Dr. Love Robinson. There he is. And I love that he took a picture with that white coat and the stethoscope and everything.
No.
That's the best part of the story, if you ask me.
There's 1,000 great parts of the story, which we're going to get to. But first of all, his first name is Malachi, like the Malachi Crunch, which is awesome. Second of all, he's got love in his name, so some people call him Dr. Love. But my favorite part is not the stethoscope or the kind of mohawk he has in that picture, but this.
To be fair, that's how a lot of doctors would do it. I think he did his research. That's
you think doctors take pictures like this?
I think some doctors and people about to graduate 8th grade do.
Yes.
It's like it's the equivalent of the newsman, like the side thing. I like it.
Breaking news, his name is actually pronounced Malachi, not Malachi.
Okay, but it's Malachi Crunches.
Yeah. We're very hungry. We're thinking about kolaches. Yeah.
All right. So
It's funny. I wouldn't even put it in there. I was like, Malachi. I was like, that is a weird name.
All right, so let me give you the details on what he did. Now, 18-year-old Malachi Love Robinson of West Palm Beach, Florida, was arrested this week for practicing medicine without a license. The teen recently opened the New Birth, New Life Alternative Medicine and Urgent Care Clinic.
I love this guy.
A high-quality, holistic, and alternative medical care facility where police say he misled patients into thinking he was a licensed medical doctor. Now, he ran this place for 3 months. Look, he's 18 years old. I don't know where he got the money to rent this place. I don't know how he successfully did this for 3 months, but I almost want to give him props. That's kind of amazing.
No. Look, we're not allowed to give him props when you find out that he was pretending to be a gynecologist. Okay?
He didn't pretend.
A little uncomfortable. Okay.
Okay, so let me give you the details on that. A year before he got caught this recent time, he went into a hospital and he pretended to be a doctor, and then there was supposed to be some sort of gynecological, exam. And right before he was going to be part of that, he got caught because the doctors were like,
why is he giggling so much?
That guy. Does he have a stiffy? No. They were looking at him and they're like, that guy seems like he's a little too young to be a doctor, right?
Yeah,
And
he had his lab coat at the time too. He was 17. He's walking around the hospital. He's got the lab coat. I think it said anesthesiologist.
Yes.
Story. He did, yeah.
We did cover that story.
So he gets caught, and that time they didn't put him in jail because they were like, oh, he's being enterprising.
Yeah.
But no, you can't go and pretend to be a gynecologist or an anesthesiologist checking in on a gynecology exam. Okay, and then there's also allegations that he might have taken someone's checks and used them across town. Now, having said that, I feel bad because there are things I like about him. He is very enterprising.
Yes.
I like all the effort that he goes into because first, the name of his clinic being New Birth, New Life, Holistic and Alternative Medical Center and Urgent Care.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
You know what saved it? First of all, he opened it. Right?
Yeah,
he didn't just walk into the hospital. He's like, I'm going to make my own hospital.
Yeah.
Their patients are going to come to me. So he's genius. And adding and urgent care.
Yeah, like that. Yeah, I'm telling you, the kid's smart.
So smart.
And then he's got online. He's got a 5-star rating.
Yeah.
2 people went to his clinic. They're like, he's pretty good.
He's pretty good.
Well, then apparently, is he really committing any crimes here?
Okay, but here's the amazing thing. So if you want to be a holistic doctor in Florida, you don't need a license. So that's what he was planning on using as his defense. But unfortunately, he got caught treating a woman the way an actual doctor would. There was a sting operation. That's how he got caught.
Yeah, so undercover cop.
Excuse me.
When the undercover cop went in, he actually pretended to be a doctor.
Yeah.
So if he had just left well enough alone, and now look, he's lying about everything. He said he was 25, he's 18. He put up his credentials online. He said he has a PhD, which he doesn't. Also an HHPC and an AMPC. 2 things that do not exist. Okay, they're not things, but it's awesome.
No,
you know what?
Not in this dimension.
But when you see that, you're like, ooh, he's got an HHPC.
He's got an HHPC. Where'd you get that? Rite Aid? I printed it up.
But it sounds official.
Isn't it a little bit weird that I have friends who are in
gynecologists?
No, who are in areas of medicine that I don't necessarily believe are like medicine or whatever. But that's what they're doing with their life. They're perfectly fine people. But but we're cracking down on this guy who apparently is the people that go into the clinic kind of like it or whatever. And no, I don't think that he did the right thing. But it's not like he just said, I'm opening up, the Woodhaven Urgent Care Center. He said it's alternative, it's holistic. I think that the disservice that's being done is that we continue to raise generations of people who believe that all sorts of things that aren't actually medicine are medicine, and would expect that the people that are treating them actually have licenses. There are fields of medicine that have been around for a century in America that have no scientific backing whatsoever, but you can find them in every city, and those are perfectly fine and totally cool, and I grew up thinking that some of them were legit medicine.
But to be fair, do those guys have HHPC?
I didn't. I checked. That's why I didn't go to them in the end.
I remember it being in Miami, and there was some holistic medicine that somebody recommended to me, and then in the label it says, like, Native Americans used this back in the day. And I was like, Native Americans died when they were like 25.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that.
I like the idea that there was a drug that used the phrase back in the day.
No, but I mean, you told a story about that. You know, we're like,
back in the day. All right.
I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm going to take a drug that people use in this day.
Right. The 2 things. One, we should do a show where we just say like what we call like TYT, holistic care, and holistic medicine and urgent care, right? And we just all wear lab coats.
By the way, right now we have a huge problem in the country where we have these pregnancy crisis centers with conservative people who are not doctors posing as doctors, right? And they're able to do it, and they have
that's a great point. Yeah. Wait a minute, if this kid's arrested, all those guys posing as doctors who are then trying to get people to not have abortions, they should all be arrested.
But they're not. They're protected for some reason.
All right, and to be fair to the kid, he wasn't just trying to look at Gucci, right? Is that a word?
It's Malacucci.
Okay, sorry. He checked everybody that came in. He worked on an 86-year-old. That was the one he stole the checks from. Okay. So, by the way, when the cop came in, he's like, he used the stethoscope. He's like, you're all right. Okay, now, what if she wasn't all right, right? And then for the 86-year-old, he's like, ooh, no, you're going to need to go in right now. Okay, he has no idea. The ambulance comes in. To the hospital.
He's urgent care. Why is she going somewhere else?
So they take her to the hospital. That's when he gets her checks. So it has there's issues here. There's real issues.
So his grandfather talked to the press, and his grandfather was like, I don't know why he's in trouble. He's just a really smart, very driven and motivated kid. In fact, he was also a minister. Okay. So
no, by the way, up and coming minister.
Up and coming minister. Let's go to graphic number 15. I'm sorry, 16. Among his accomplishments, Robinson, his grandfather, said, was his position as an up-and-coming minister at the New Birth Outreach Ministries.
And urgent care.
Oh, New Birth.
Yeah, I said the New Birth.
Okay.
And by the way, the woman that he was trying to check in on the gynecology exam, pregnant. So there might be something going on there.
Now, on a website offering free ordained ministry certificates, Love Robinson is listed as a reverend who specializes in philosophical theology, religious epistemology, and Christian apologetics. I don't even know what that is.
It's like the sort of theorizing the defense of why certain things are the way they are in Christianity and all that.
You'd have to be an apologetic to believe that.
His biography states he is working on a doctoral thesis and lists him as a naturopathic physician.
He's done those things.
Yeah, but look, again, it's the same voodoo, right? If if he was doing this as a person who was going to help you spiritually, everybody would be like, yeah, that's cool, yeah, of course, right? Yeah. But in reality, there's no such thing. We've all just agreed that ministers can help you, and rabbis and imams. A lot of people going for help to imams in this country, but
yeah.
Well, and at least they have theology programs. Like, people go and they study for years to become, like high-placed leaders in churches and things like that.
Finally, this kid, if he wanted to do these kind of scams, there is a legitimate way of doing it. You go to Wall Street and make some real money, right? So, just word to the wise.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
forward. All right. Pope Francis has finally spoken out about the Zika virus and what women can and can't do should they get pregnant or wish to avoid getting pregnant because of the Zika virus. Now, as you know, if you are a woman who is pregnant and have contracted the Zika virus, either through sexual contact or through a mosquito biting you, your baby could be born with a condition known as microcephaly, which is an underdeveloped head and brain. Usually, babies that are born with this condition do not live very long. Well, Pope Francis was asked whether or not it's okay for women to use contraception in order to avoid getting pregnant. And here's what happened. Pope Francis said that contraception could be seen as the lesser of two evils if women are concerned about having children with the birth defect microcephaly. However, he also says that if you are considering getting an abortion, that is not acceptable under any circumstance. Francis did say in strong terms that abortion is an absolute evil and should not be considered, even if there's a risk the infant will be born with microcephaly.
So we kind of like Pope Francis. He's a little bit more reasonable and lighter than the other popes.
No, I don't think. I think you're underestimating. I don't think a little bit. I think dramatic. I mean, so you just said you can use birth control.
Yeah, sort of. Now, but again, to be perfectly accurate, he never used the word contraception or birth control. He just said, if you don't get pregnant, it's not an absolute evil.
Yeah, okay.
That's him sanctioning it.
Yeah.
Right. So, that's 1,000 times better than what we used to have. Ben's right about that.
I mean, it's a crime what the Catholic Church has done in the poorest parts of the world, where they have so many followers in Africa and in Central and South America, where you can't use birth control and you can't have an abortion, and you don't have any money.
Mm-hmm.
And they could change it like that by just saying yes to birth control.
Well, that's where I was going, Ben, because although he's already 1,000 times better than the other popes and other clergy that we've grown up with in our lives, and he's blown up all the Republican heads in this country, he suggested that the way that he didn't say Donald Trump, but someone like Donald Trump would treat the Mexicans would be unchristian. And these guys who've been hitting us over the head with, hey, you got to follow our religion for our whole lives, and we got to pass laws in America based on our religion. Now all of a sudden they're turning around and go, screw the Pope, ignore that guy. Having said all of that, it's amazing to me that even the Pope hasn't read the Bible.
Yeah.
The Catholic Church for all these years still maintaining that the Bible is pro-life, what we call quote-unquote pro-life in this country. When it isn't. There are several passages in the Bible that totally sanction abortion, including one where it says if you think your wife is cheating on you, give her a toxic poison. If she miscarries, she had cheated on you, and it's a good thing you killed that baby, okay? or fetus, right? But these guys have been telling us as a baby their whole lives, right? Our whole lives. And if she doesn't miscarry, well, congratulations, she didn't cheat on you, and it's all good. Well, that's God sanctioning abortion. It's in the Bible, but and there is no part that says you should not have an abortion. None. All they do is they take a verse that says, "Isn't life great?" See, pro-life. No, it didn't mention abortion. It didn't mention a pregnancy. It didn't mention a term. It didn't mention anything like that, right? So it's super weird that we have all agreed upon this fiction.
Yeah.
Just because some pope hundreds of years ago or whatever said, yeah, I don't like abortion, even though the Bible says the opposite. I talked to God, and He told me that the Bible is against abortion. It's just not true. It's factually not true. And now when this pope says, I talked to God, and he doesn't like Donald Trump, they're like, get out of here, pope, what would you know?
Look, I know that the Pope is kind of forced to believe and to keep pushing this notion that abortion is wrong under any and all circumstances. But just think about what he said there about the abortion, right? So even if you believe that there's a big reason that your baby's going to be born with microcephaly, and you're going to have to go through the trauma of losing a child, and that baby is going to not live a very long life, doesn't matter, we're still going to force you to have that baby.
Mm-hmm.
Think about how that's terrible.
Having largely grown up completely secular and largely not religious, it's mystifying to me that I would care what you think I should do with my life.
Right.
Like this whole idea of we're going to force you to have the baby. No, you're not. You're going to piss off because I don't care what you think or what you think your God or Odin or Zeus told you. I'm not interested. But these guys think, well, if it's my religion, of course I should make you live your life based on my religion, which again is the fact that we're even having that conversation is insane in this day and age in America.
And of course, regardless of whether you personally agree with the Pope or insert whichever religious leader, because obviously a lot of even Christians don't follow the Pope, let alone other religions, it doesn't matter because a lot of the governments do follow it, and that's why their laws are the way they are, including places like Ireland and South America now.
Following religion as part of your law, that sounds like Sharia law.
Different language, though. Yeah. And obviously that's why it's so incredibly consequential what he says or how what he says is interpreted because he's being intentionally vague. I mean, this is a situation where the CDC doesn't even know for sure yet if it can be transmitted sexually. There were the reports of the possibility that it was an actual mosquito anti-larval agent that might be causing it. And I did more research today that seems to indicate that that's not the case, but they don't know for sure. And supposedly the CDC is about to, within a few weeks, finally demonstrate a causal link, if there is one, between not the sexual part, but that Zika and microcephaly are actually linked, because despite the fact that we're talking about it a lot, they don't even know for sure that that's there. And so he needs to, considering that both of those things could be true, it could be transmitted sexually, and it could cause microcephaly, he needs to be aware that this could affect millions of lives through Central and South America right now, Africa, where Zika outbreaks have happened before, and very soon in America because the mosquito migration patterns are changing. And so he needs to be incredibly careful, and I think that maybe that's why he's treading so carefully in the beginning. Maybe this is a prelude to more open acceptance of birth control in the near future.
I love that you laid out all those facts of things that we should consider. Then meanwhile, some people go, yeah, but what did the bush say to Moses on top of the mountain? Okay, give him a break. For sure
I had a whole other point, but it seems John went off with his, facts and information. I'll say it anyway now because what's interesting is I'm not a religious expert. I don't know a lot about Catholicism. None of us do. I probably know less, but I know that the clergy is filled with renegade priests, and they're part of the order, but all over the world there. I mean, they're and I don't know how many there are. I don't know what kind of signal this sends to them. There are plenty of priests who clearly counsel women, and they're like, yeah, I can't have another kid, and they're probably like, we know. They're like, yeah, I got it. So use birth control, but you didn't hear from me, right? But you're not
the priest. Yeah, the priest turned Jewish. You didn't hear from me,
right? Yeah. So my hunch is that this is that stuff like this is probably pretty powerful as a message sent to those priests who are legitimately, and of which there are thousands and thousands legitimately involved in their communities where they are important parts of the community, where they're not, where they're really tending to their flock and they're not punishing them and they're not yelling at people. Where it's not so anyway, that's why I think that this might be significant.
No, it's enormously important because some people do listen to the Pope. Meanwhile, Fox News said, "Oh, who cares what the Pope thinks? He's a foreigner." I don't know if they know this. All the popes have been foreigners.
Yeah. What did Trump say to the Pope this week? What did he call him? That it was outrageous that
called him disgraceful.
It's disgraceful that a religious person that a religious leader would question somebody else's faith. Who else is supposed to question your faith? I mean, if anybody's allowed to question your faith, I think it's the Pope.
And he can literally excommunicate people. That implies he can judge it if he wants to.
All he does is judge your faith.
And he implied that the Mexicans had tricked the Pope.
Yeah, that's right.
And the Pope talks to God. You think the Mexicans tricked him? I can't even believe any of that. But finally, I think that what Pope Francis is going to do at the very end, after he's changed all these things and he take nice and easy, slowly first, maybe not controversial, and at the end he's going to be like, by the way, now all Catholics, you're not pro-life anymore, you're pro-choice. Drop the mic, get out of here. Drop the, what's the thing in there? The yarmulke on, is it?
I'm pretty sure.
Drop the gun. All right, guys, we're out of time. God bless USC. Thank you, Annenberg School at USC for letting us do the show out of here. It was super fun.
We might not leave.
Yeah.
I think we'll just stay here.
The campus is nice. Lovely.
It really is.
It really is.
Cafes everywhere.
No, it's great.
Delightful.
Part of town. It's good.
Yeah, Irina and I were talking about, the students, they don't do anything. It's so much fun.
I bet they feel like they're doing a lot.
I deliberately, we had a couple choices of where to park.
For sure.
The free one was farther away. But I made sure to park in the free one farther away because I thought I'm going to enjoy this walk across campus.
I felt the same exact way.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Just being here, I wish that I could be in school again. That's why after doing more than 4 full years in undergrad, I then went to 5 years of graduate school. I just like
it's also super. You're not maybe, but
he was working on his PhD. I don't know.
So am I.
Yeah, and it ended somehow.
So was Malaga.
It's great. It's so humbling.
I have an HHPC.
Walking across the college campus, right? Because you still think, I'm nearing 50, but I got it going on. I don't have it going on. There's nothing going.
Yeah, nothing going on. I got bad news.
This just in. Nothing's going on.
All right. Join us, tytnetwork.com/join to become a member. We love you. I was going to say we're going to see you Monday. I forgot for a second it's election season. No, we're going to see you tomorrow and fairly early. 3 o'clock Eastern, the caucus results might start to come in. So we're going to be on the air, tytnetwork.com/live. That's really important. That's Nevada. Okay, everybody from Nevada, calm down. And that's Bernie versus Hillary Clinton. It's a dead heat, so there might be another moment where it's like, here comes Bernie, right? And then later in that same day, the Republicans have the South Carolina primary. That'll also be very interesting.
So 2 things, yeah, right. I mean, I think Hillary had finally some distance in one poll. She was up 6 in one Nevada poll.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, there's been 3 polls. Tie, Hillary by 1, Hillary by 6. 3 polls. A good poll, too. But again, 53-47, that doesn't, it's still super, super close.
Yet, I've heard reports that she's panicking. They've left
John Ralston, who's a super, he has his finger on the pulse of Nevada. Everybody says that, and he senses, well, obviously they're worried. They were ahead by 40, and now they're ahead by at most 6. So they have reason to panic. But also a really significant Republican poll today of, because we had the poll this week where Cruz took the lead, and everybody went nuts with that. Like there weren't 12 other polls within 2 days that had Trump up
the same day.
Points, right? The same day that had Trump up anywhere from. But that said, now we've had another poll that had his lead in South Carolina down to 5. So that might be some sense of movement and some sense.
He was leading more in Iowa than he was.
Maybe that debate did have some effect.
Maybe.
So, and who knows, and maybe fighting with the Pope. Like, again, I keep thinking, and I don't know, at some point, no one's going to be shocked if there's a threshold where people are like, hey, no, really?
Yeah. All right, so everybody, 3 p.m. Eastern, tytnetwork.com/live. We'll see you there. Bye-bye.
What's their new technique?
Yeah, look, this is.
Hey, can you guys play us out? Can you play us out?
I'm not sure I liked it, but I noticed it.